Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Surbhi Dahiya 77, the Media Mentor. If you are listening to my video for the first time, I'm Professor Surbhi Dahiya and I head the journalism department at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. Friends, you can subscribe to my channel for regular videos on news reporting, on specialized beat reporting, journalism, communication, current affairs, mass communication and media business management. We have already discussed what is news elements, values, components of a news story, and also the qualities and the characteristics of a news story. Today we will try and understand the news writing structures and styles, basically the news writing formats. So if you talk about the news writing structures and style, the structure of a news story, my dear friends, it follows a layout and a design for the passage or the publication of news. People have a tendency to tell stories chronologically. News writing is not exactly, all styles are not chronological. Some start writing intros as you have learned in schools in writing essays. But friends, we need to unlearn writing essay introductions when we write news stories. We've already talked about the main components of the story, that is the lead and the main body and the end. So let us learn the important news writing formats, styles and structures. We have many styles and structures, but the most important and the most common is the inverted pyramid style. It has been called as the storytelling on its head. So the inverted pyramid, as the name indicates, it is an upside down triangle where the broad base represents the most newsworthy and important information on the top, and the narrow tip, it has the least newsworthy information in order of descending importance. As the name indicates, the inverted pyramid, it comes from picturing the broad facts at the top of the story that I just told you, followed by smaller and smaller details like a triangle which is balanced out on one corner. It is best suited for news briefs or stories about the news events. So these formats, they convey information in a very quick and very efficient manner. And the widest part on the top, it represents the most substantial, most interesting and important information to the news story. And the reader, he or she, gets the idea of a story in the first paragraph, that is the lead itself. Friends, you must be remembering we talked about the summary lead, right? So it includes all the 5 W's and 1 H. So this inverted pyramid structure entails all the 5 W's and 1 H in the lead itself. So the less important information following the same, which may or may not interest the reader. All the questions of who, what, when, where, why and how, they're answered in this first 2 paragraphs itself. So as the facts are arranged in a way that the most relevant information is followed by events in diminishing degree of importance, so it serves the purpose of allowing the stories that ran long to be cut from the bottom without losing the essential information. The editor can cut your story from the last paragraph, from the second last paragraph, but still the story is complete. That's what the inverted pyramid structure is about. Then we also have the feature structure or the feature style. Features are basically the human interest stories, but when we talk about featurized news, a featurized story, they are several longer articles or features in the newspaper, magazine, and news reports is like a snapshot of the event, but the feature is a fuller portrait of the scenario and often immersive in the style. So it escapes the hard news format, allowing the creative writers, along all of us, to write feature articles in an inventive and a compelling way. So these are creative writing styles which carry news in a more storytelling way. They take away the dry newsiness, and they bring in the human emotion to the story. These articles, they cover all aspects of the news story, and they do not have a limitation of the length of a particular format, and they are the stories of people, of places, of circumstances. So broadly, features are of two kinds: news features and evergreen features, or the timeless features. But here we are talking about the featurized stories. So the news feature, it's a timely feature. It is based on a recent news or an event. And timeless features have intrinsic human interest, and they do not have a shelf life. Newspaper features, they're usually short, within say 500 to 700 words, and less descriptive, while magazine features are long, more descriptive, and more leisurely. So feature articles, they tell the readers what they want to know based on the fact if they are interested in the topic, or like the style of the author, or are attracted to some aspect of the story. So it is a flexible format revealing dynamics behind the headlines and various scenes, and they deal with the subject in greater depth and even greater length. The next style, my dear friends, is the sand clock style. I'm sure you must have seen the hourglass. So the modified form of the inverted pyramid is called as a sand clock style, which is also known as the hourglass style of news writing. It is one of the story shape that journalists can employ when they have news to report and a story to tell. It marries the inverted pyramid newsy structure to the flamboyant storytelling of the features. They give a much needed structure to the stories, like any foundational structure. So this format was used by the journalists to be true to the compulsions of the word limits, but they have a narrative style to the story. And it was identified in 1983 by Roy Peter Clark of the Pointers Institute. Like an inverted pyramid structure, it begins with the most important information first, but it takes a turn in the middle and becomes a chronological narrative. So this style of writing can be divided into three parts: the top, the turn, and the narrative. So let me explain you the three parts as well. The top is the opening of the story, which includes a summary lead followed by 3 or 4 paragraphs giving the most important facts. The lead of the article, it consists of the basic news in a concise manner, and it forms the reader it informs the reader of the news events in the minimum possible space, in the minimum possible words, and quenches the curiosity of the reader. And then there's a turn. It's also called as a transaction paragraph. So this section tells that the narrative will now begin. It is the most important part in this style of writing news, and usually it contains attribution for a narrative that follows. Then there's a narrative. So this is the last part of the story, and it gives information about the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story in a chronological order. So details, dialogues, quotations, background information, they're all given in this section. So the sand clock style of news writing, it's basically summarizes the news and then shifts to a narrative. So this style is used when the news story has some sequence or sequential events to be told. It is best suited for covering trials, accidents, crime, disaster news. Whereas dramatic stories, they can be told in chronological fashion. So it satisfies the editors who prefer a traditional approach to news writing, as well as readers who want a more, complete story. Now let us go to the next, style of news writing, which is also called as the nut graph. So friends, what is a nut graph? How do you write a news story in a nut graph manner? Mostly, visible in feature style stories. This element, it was described by Ken Wells, a writer and an editor at the Wall Street Journal, as a paragraph that says what this whole story is about and why you should read it. So it's a flag to the reader, high up in the story. You can decide to proceed or not, but if you read no further, you know what that story is all about. So this term nut graph, it's a derivative of the expression in a nutshell, combined with the word paragraph graph. So nut graph. It follows the lead in summarizing the story and takes the baton of the narrative ahead. So in a nut graph, the writers and editors, they explain the first line of the story and connects it to what comes next for the reader. So it points out the essence of the narrative and sets up sort of evidences and sources to prove the authenticity of the story. So it also explains why the story is worth their time. So as I said, it was coined in Wall Street Journal around 5 decades or 6 decades ago. It wraps the fruit of the nut news, around the kernel of the essential theme. A nut graph informs the readers about the focus of the news and the feature story. It elaborates the leads and provides context for the story, as well as explains the news value of the story. It tells the readers what the writer is up to. Sometimes a nut graph is an expanded explanation of the why or the what, giving the lead some background or some context. So if you talk about the Pointers Institute, the US-based Pointer Institutes, it explains that nut graph has various purposes, several purposes. It justifies the story by telling the readers why they should care. It provides a transition from the lead and explains the lead and its connection to the rest of the story. It also tells the readers why the story is timely, and it often includes supporting material that helps the readers see why the story is important. Nut graphs, they give a bit more creative freedom to the writer. So in case of a hard news story, for example, the lead mostly contains the focus of the news. So nut graph may not be required, but in case of a feature or a soft story, nut graph becomes very critical. It is placed high in the story, generally by the 3rd to 5th paragraph. But if the lead is strong enough, it can also come later. And once you find that idea or thread, all the other anecdotes, illustrations, quotes, and the pearls that hang on the thread. There was a journalist called Thomas Boswell in Washington Post. He was a sports columnist. He said that the thread, may seem very humble, but the pearls may seem very flashy. But it's still the thread that makes the necklace. So find the thread to the story. Or I would say one needs to figure out the point or the story angle. So summarize the story angle in one sentence. It is said that the ability to, concise your story at the back of the business card enables a clarity of explaining the news to the readers. This is the walkaway sentence which should, answer what the point is and why one should care about it. So, friends, the next style is the Martini Glass style. It is a close cousin or close cousin of inverted pyramid style. It covers the most important information first and then transitions into providing a series of events in chronological order. Then presents a strong concluding statement, also known as the kicker here. This is best suited for stories on crime, on disaster, or other dramatic news stories where you want to include a chronology to show how events unfold. So what are the necessary requirements to form the Martini Glass format? Let us see that. What are those requirements? The first is inverted pyramid, the beginning. So this basically details, as I said, the 5 W's in 1 H of a piece. It gives the reader the information that they need to know right away without needing to wade through many details that they may not want. So this gives the readers everything they need to know in just the first few sentences. Then comes the transition or the glass. So this is the brief statement that indicates the shift to the chronological piece of the story later. This can also be used as a transitional part that ushers the readers into the next section of the story. Then we have the stem. You've seen the glass, right? The Martini glass. The recap or the stem where you hold the glass. This is the chronological piece of the story. Here you write step by step the details of the event. So when the story calls for chronological events, put them here. Especially when the stories that call for details such as events or readers, they require a step-by-step recap here. It should rather be very brief, but it has to be made sure all important components make an appearance here. And then, friends, we have a kicker or a base, the base of that glass. This is a solid concluding statement. It should be something memorable that you leave your readers with. It is often, a surprising twist, a strong closing quote maybe, or something very, very interesting, or even could be downright, funny. So using the inverted pyramid style here, the Martini Glass model, it allows you to lay out the important details first and move on to the specifics, later on. Last but not the least, we have one more news writing style which is called as the Kaboob. It is used for stories on trends and events where you want to show how actual people are affected or involved. So in the Kaboob format, the story begins with an anecdote about a specific person, and it includes a nut graph and details of the 5 W's in 1 H. Then the story broadens into a general discussion of the topic and ends by returning to the specific person once again. So I'm sure you must have gone to a restaurant and you must have ordered for a Sikh kebab or a Kaboob square. So you've seen the arrangement on the Sikh, the veggies or the chicken or whatever. So this starts with a juicy red tomato, could be an anecdote, follows with a nut graph, then add chunk after chunk after chunk until you reach the end, where you reprise what another tomato, a final quote, or an anecdote. So think of arranging the veggies on the squish kaboob square, and then comes the transitions as you move from the beginning of your story to the end and from one paragraph to the next paragraph. Be sure to include the transitions. Transitions are words or phrases which keep the story flowing smoothly and let the reader know you are either talking about the same thing or as before, or you have changed the subject. So beyond this, there are many other ways a story can be organized. There is no simple one size fits all solution for organizing your stories. As you become more experienced, you will maybe have your own styles of writing, but these are general styles which one follows when you enter a newsroom. When the story unfolds in a different way, maybe you have another style of writing. But there's nothing random about good writing. Every story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that beginning has to be the gist of the news. Come to the main and the most important points first, followed by the details. So my dear friends, I'll take your leave now. Thank you so much for your patient hearing, and see you soon with new videos on journalism and beat reporting. If you like my channel and if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel. And the name, as you know, Surbhi Dahiya 77, the Media Mentor.